It's kind of a secret. People don't talk about over drinking. For me, I just sort of was drinking every day and thinking, well, everyone does, don't they? But when I finally did and I finally addressed it, I just can't begin to tell you how different my life was.
What was it that inspired you not only to go sober, but then want to help loads of other people as well?
We tend to think there are two types of drinkers. There are those who are absolutely at rock bottom, they're clinically dependent, they need support, they need, medical services, and then there's absolutely everybody else. And they're just happy social drinkers, and every now and then they get a bit naughty and they can't hold their beer. And it's so not true. The reality is you can get off that booze elevator before you hit the rock bottom piece. And I think that's the reality for so many women, and particularly with young kids. It's that mummy wine culture thing. Alcohol is the social glue that sticks everything together.
And like you say, when you're talking about like the mum culture, a de-stressing element.
The expression now is grey area drinkers. Let's not sugarcoat it. Poison in your body every single day takes its toll. And it's really hard for you to actually connect with that part of you that's able to, just kind of trust yourself and become authentic.
What about if someone's thinking, but I feel like I can't kind of like dance like no one's watching without a drink. I can't be fun. I can't strike up a conversation. I can't go on a date.
I would just simply say, ask yourself, could my life be better physically and emotionally without alcohol?
From touring the world with Wham to having her own singing career, being a published author and hosting on one of the biggest, most famous radio shows, to now being the founder of the UK's biggest sobriety brand and collective, The Sober Club. Please welcome to the podcast, Janey Lee Grace.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be here.
It's great to see you.
And you?
So there's so many chapters of your life that's so interesting.
I wear a lot of hats.
You wear a lot of hats, and you wear a lot of good hats as well. I love your style.
Thank you.
But for people who are listening and straight away want to hear something that's going to give them loads of value, I'd love to dive in straight away to talk about the sobriety journey.
Okay.
Especially because it resonates so much with me as well. So I stopped drinking in 2017, and I'd love to talk to you about your sobriety journey.
Yeah.
What was it that inspired you not only to go sober, but then want to help loads of other people as well?
Well, the irony for me is that I was working in natural health already. I was very much an advocate of holistic living. I'd written my first book 20 years ago, staggeringly, Imperfectly Natural Woman. That was a #1 Amazon bestseller. And because of that, I ended up doing all kinds of amazing things and working with brands and being a speaker and just becoming absolutely passionate, really, about every aspect of well-being. And yet, throughout that whole period, I was stepping around this huge elephant in the room that was alcohol. And it was almost as if, thankfully I had the title Imperfectly Natural, so I wasn't going to get everything right. But for me, I just sort of was drinking every day and thinking, well, everyone does, don't they? It's the done thing. It's what we do in the UK. And I just didn't see it as a problem. But obviously, unconsciously, I knew it was an issue. And over the years, I started becoming really aware that this was not okay. And it's really important to stress that I didn't ever have a rock bottom. So there was not really that sense of anyone else mentioning it to me. Or, I would never drive. I would never have a hangover. Such was my tolerance. It was just drinking every day, as so many people do. And it was only when I finally got my wake-up call and realised something had to change that I set about, becoming free from the alcohol trap, which was harder than I thought it would be. I figured, well, I'm fairly successful. I should be able to do this little piece, But then I realised just how tricky it can be, particularly as it's kind of a secret. People don't talk about over drinking. But when I finally did and I finally addressed it, I just can't begin to tell you how different my life was. And I started to realize I can't keep this quiet. I have to share it. I really do. So I tentatively did a little coming out video on YouTube sharing that I'd gone sober. And I thought I was going to be, I thought everyone would harangue me and call me a hypocrite and on and on. But actually most people were lovely. And I actually got so many messages from people saying, can you help me actually now? And then I did a TEDx talk. And it was after the TEDx talk that I can't tell you how many women particularly came up to me during the actual occasion, during the actual event, and they said, I'm drinking too much as well, and I don't even tell my husband I'm drinking, or, nobody really knows, but I know it's got to stop. So would you be able to help me? And that's when I thought, yeah, why not? I'm going to do some more coach training. I'm going to become a coach. And eventually that led to setting up the community because, as you know, connection is one of the most important things.
So you've got the Sober Club for people wanting to go sober, and you've also got a sober coaching brand as well, which we're going to get onto.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I want to unpack about what you said. So that, because obviously your career started in the music industry.
Yeah.
And then you also had this affinity to the wellness industry, and you were working with Hay House.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, obviously Louise Hay, huge wellness publication company, right?
Who, by the way, on that note, Louise Hay didn't actually form Hay House Publishing till she was in her 60s.
Wow.
How cool is that?
That's really
If
cool.
anyone is thinking, it's too late, it's never too late.
I love
amazing,
stories like
isn't it?
that. And I think it's really cool, the idea of having these other chapters in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
But to go back to getting really specific about the drinking, in case anyone kind of listening or watching is like, oh, that's me. When you were drinking every day, something that really resonated with me that you said was, no one would have necessarily have thought that you had an issue.
No,
you didn't even reach a rock bottom in your mind. When you were drinking every day, what was like your typical drink and what time of day was it?
I think it was very typical. I do think in this country we have a real issue with the perception of people who drink. We tend to think there are two types of drinkers. There are those who are absolutely at rock bottom. They're clinically dependent. They need support. They need medical services. And then there's absolutely everybody else. And they're just happy social drinkers. And every now and then they get a bit naughty and they can't hold their beer. And it's so not true. It's a spectrum. The expression now is grey area drinkers. It's a spectrum of all different shades. And the reality is you can get off that booze elevator before you hit the rock bottom piece. But for me, I was, some way down. I was drinking pretty much every day, as were most of my friends, I think. And I can't say exactly what time, but I suppose it's the 6 o'clock. It's the witching hour. The sun is over the yard arm, as we say. And then I'd treat myself, or so I thought, to a large cold glass of white wine. My kids were young. I was really busy. It felt as though it was a treat. But then, of course, it was never enough. One wasn't enough. Then it was another one, and then it was another one. And of course, if it was a really busy day, there'd be one at lunchtime as well. And this went on for years and years and years. But it was what everyone else did too. So obviously, I didn't really know there was an issue until I started waking up at 3 a.m., which, interestingly is when the liver's trying to repair. And I would wake up at 3 a.m. and a little voice would be saying to me, "What are you doing? This is not congruent with who you're meant to be. You're on the radio talking about holistic living, and you're giving talks on organic food and skincare without chemicals, and then you're downing the best part of a bottle every night. What are you doing?" And it was literally as though this part of my unconscious mind was challenging me. And so I would kind of talk back to that voice and I'd say, yeah, absolutely. That's it. I'm not drinking again. That's it. No more. But then, of course, the next day would come, and then by 6 p.m, the voice of the wine witch would be in my ear, saying, well, it'd be rude not to. I mean, come on, you're so busy. And then it would all start again. And I think that's the reality for so many women, and particularly with young kids. It's that mummy wine culture thing. It's how you're accepted, isn't it? It's alcohol is the social glue that sticks everything together. It's play dates, it's commiserations, it's celebrations.
And like you say, when you're talking about like the mum culture, a de-stressing element.
Yeah, totally.
Or
it's
perceived.
It's what we see as our treat. It really is. It's crazy that we see alcohol as a treat when, I now know, I didn't know this years ago, so I'm not judging anyone at all. But I do now know that even one glass is harmful. That's the reality.
And so did you feel like you were never fully sober, or was that not something that resonated with you until you then had your first kind of spell of sobriety, because you were drinking every day? Or did it just feel, because it was ultimately, because you were doing radio and because you'd written books by this point, hadn't you?
Oh, yeah.
So that's like a very high functioning individual, isn't it? A lot of people don't ever write a book. A lot of people are never on air. So there's a lot of what you were doing that's like, took a lot of focus, a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And yet every day you were having a drink. So you were very high functioning.
Oh, yeah. And I think most people are. In fact, the expression is high bottomed. I wish.
What does
But
that mean?
That's what they call it. You're a high bottom drinker. You haven't reached rock bottom.
Oh, right.
I've never quite got the high bottom, but I definitely was fully functioning. And I think most people are. And, the reality of it is we become, if you're doing all the other pieces, which of course I was eating really well. I was taking lots of supplements. Thank goodness, because I don't know what would have happened otherwise. But I was, to all intents and purposes, very healthy and had loads of energy and functioning really well. But behind the scenes, I've got no idea what was really going on and to what extent it was damaging me. We don't know, do we? We don't know what will happen. But that's just the physical piece. But emotionally, now that's another story. You mentioned that I was a Hay House author. I was, and also I was a presenter on Hay House Radio. So because of that period of my life, I was really steeped in all kinds of stuff around spirituality and well-being. There wasn't really anything I didn't know about the concept of self-love, self-esteem. And yet, if you'd asked me about my own personal practice, don't be ridiculous. I'll go and interview someone, but don't ask me. Because of course I had zero self-esteem. Zero self-love. I had no idea what that even meant for me personally. I could not sit and meditate, for goodness sake. I'd be up doing a shopping list. And I now realize it's because when you are putting, let's not sugarcoat it, poison in your body every single day, takes its toll. And it's really hard for you to actually connect with that part of you that's able to, I don't know, just kind of trust yourself and become authentic. So that was one of the most massive changes for me that people don't really talk about. You can't really bottle that piece about choosing to be alcohol free. You can tell people that, your skin will look better and you'll sleep better and you'll have more energy and you'll have more clarity. And all of those things are true, of course. But the coming back to who you really are and actually being able to like yourself, that's massive.
That's the biggest piece. And I think, like you say, you can always, for me personally, like I remember having conversations with people like, I don't know, like a personal trainer who would say, of course you should give up drinking, it's empty calories. And it just wouldn't land with me. It was only when I spoke to people who got it on an emotional level because maybe they had previously been drinking and they understood that whole self-love piece that you're talking about. And I think what's really interesting is the conversation around it being in tandem with like an idea of wellness, because there's a lot of people who will go to Ibiza, get on it, come back, do
a
Pilates,
detox,
have the green juice,
and
it's all like it can go hand in hand, but it's completely at odds.
It is. It's quite interesting because I used to see it as my little vice, but I didn't really think anything of it. I had no concept of the extent to which it was actually affecting me. I had no concept of how different life would be without it. And this is, I suppose, really my passion now, is trying to encourage people and inspiring people to realize that this is not about waiting until you are at rock bottom or waiting until you have to stop or even questioning, am I drinking too much? It isn't about that, really. The real question should be, I wonder if my life could be better physically and emotionally without alcohol. So the answer may be yes, however much you're drinking. And if a little voice says, yeah, actually, I know my life would be better physically and emotionally, then go for it, because life is so much better without. And there is nothing to lose and there's everything to gain. Nobody ever told me that. People used to talk about, we'll try to give up, or why don't you try to reduce? A therapist once said to me, just switch to vodka. That'll be less calories.
A therapist.
Seriously, really?
It's interesting.
But, they don't know. It's not their fault. They don't know. There is still not enough awareness about the fact that this is not just a wellness trend. It's not just about doing a dry January or a sober October. This is everything. This is the most important thing you'll ever do for your health and well-being.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that it's so niche still, sobriety, in a way. When
it is growing, thankfully. It's definitely changed. I mean, when I did my TEDx talk, 2019, there were some groups. There was one alcohol-free drinks bar kind of thing going on. But the rise has been incredible in the last few years. You know, the rise of availability of alcohol-free drinks, more people talking about sobriety. Obviously, I've trained a lot of coaches, which is amazing.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I do think there's huge growth. But nevertheless, as I say, still not enough people are talking about life being better without, about the fact that, you know, there's nothing to lose. That's the key piece, I think. People tend to think, well, I'm all right at the moment. You know, in fact, I used to go to a GP every now and then for something completely unrelated. Like I remember once going for a vitamin D test and then sort of asking the GP on the way out, actually, I'm a bit worried about my drinking. And she just kind of said, well, you look fine. You know, how much are you drinking? Obviously, I lied and they know you lie. And she said, well, just have a glass of water in between, or have the odd alcohol-free day. I mean, like I hadn't thought of that. So I come out of there and I'm stuck for another 3 years because, you know, the GP says it's fine. And I didn't expect her, looking back, I didn't expect her to, you know, guide me through the process. All she needed to say was, well done you for recognizing that that's what your intuition is telling you, and let me point you in the direction of the sober club or whatever, you know, because the reality is there's lots of support for people who want to quit.
When I've spoken to you previously, because I took part in your sober coaching course.
I know, it's so exciting. I can't wait to see all the magic you're going to create.
Yeah, which we'll talk about. But one of the things that you quite rightly say is that it's not about talking about giving up. Because that has the connotation of like
sacrificing, making a sacrifice. And whenever people talk about giving up, your unconscious mind is listening, and there's this unconscious thread of, oh, I can't have that, and I'm missing out. Everyone else is having a lovely drink, and the sun's shining, or the open fire is there, or whatever the associations are, but I can't have it because I've had to give that up. And if you switch that completely and call it quitting alcohol, stopping drinking, ditching the booze, whatever phrase you want, but something that's, you know, very positive and in the present tense, it helps you realize actually there really is nothing to give up. I mean, nothing. There is not one single benefit of drinking. But there are so many benefits of quitting and living alcohol free. So many benefits.
If you are struggling with alcohol and somebody who's watching this, what advice would you give to them if they want to start their journey? And maybe, I think like the both of us, they had tried to start and initially it didn't happen. Because for me, I'd do like 6 months here, 3 months there.
Yeah, me too.
And then I stuck to it. But, you know, for somebody who's like, I don't know where to start, what do I do? And like you say, there still probably isn't the mainstream support, as in you might speak to a doctor and they might kind of be a little dismissive because they don't think that there's a big problem. What should somebody do? Because it is still like a little bit of an untrodden path.
Yeah, I think you have to take it away from the medical situation unless you are clinically dependent. If you're clinically dependent, and that means you wouldn't be functioning and you know that you need medical care, then that's a completely different route. But for the majority of people who recognize that they are grey area drinkers, that they have stopped in the past, that they're functioning well, but they're drinking all the time, then one of the best things they can do is make a decision, make a commitment, make it non-negotiable, and focus on that, everything they're going to be gaining. Get inspired, get connected. That piece is really important. Of course, I'd love it if they join the sober club, but whatever connection works for you. But when I say connection, lots of clients will say to me, oh, I'm okay with that because my partner is very supportive. But it's not quite the same as being connected with people who have literally been there, done it, got the T-shirt and know how it feels.
Yeah.
So get connected and then focus on a few really important things, at least for the first kind of 6 weeks. It's really critical to eat really well. Everyone forgets that piece and they kind of think, oh, well, if I'm quitting alcohol, I think I'll lose a few pounds and I'll stop eating too. It's the worst thing you can possibly do because your brain chemistry is all over the place. So you really need to eat well and stay inspired and protect your well-being at all costs. So if that means for you that you don't want to go out to the party or the function because you're not drinking and it's early days for you, then remember that lovely phrase, no is a complete sentence.
I love that. Let's go through some of these because I know the nutrition piece is an exciting one for you. You love that.
I do. I love it. Yeah.
Will you give us just a little bit of an overview? When you say eat really well, what does that look like on a really simple level for somebody who's thinking, right, I'm going to try and do 30 days of, alcohol free?
Yeah.
What would you advise someone do nutrition-wise to support that so that they are keeping their brain chemistry in balance? Because a lot of people don't think about that.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the most important thing is eating real food. So first of all, you need to have a little look at what's already going on. So if you're someone who's fasting or doing a 5-2 diet or whatever it is, that has to go at least for 4 to 6 weeks.
So no fasting necessarily?
No, absolutely. You really need, one of the quickest ways to help that brain chemistry is with really good nutrition. We need those amino acids, the good fats, the protein. So food is the best way to do that. So 4 to 6 weeks minimum, I would say you need to just eat as much real food as you can. And I mean, we all kind of know what that is really, don't we? None of us are going to get it right 100% of the time.
So not too much processed, basically.
Exactly. Real food, just have real food, make food, find the time to make some food. And I've had lots of clients who say to me, I rush out in the morning and I rush for the train or whatever. I don't have time to eat. I get to work, I grab a cereal bar or whatever, and then have 3 coffees, and then at lunchtime, if I'm lucky, I can grab a little snack. I mean, that's hopeless for your poor brain chemistry. It doesn't know what is going on. I think most people know what real food is. It is just eat food that you've made. Ideally, don't buy too much with 1,000 ingredients. None of us are going to get it right all the time, but I think if you eat proper meals, you don't skip meals, and protein is so important. So if you are vegetarian, if you're vegan, just think really carefully about the protein that you're getting. Really good proteins, really good fats. Absolutely nothing low fat, nothing low sugar. Artificial sweeteners are terrible. Because you really need all of the good nutrients. You need really satiating nutrients. You don't want anything skimmed or, anything that's just full of chemicals. You want real food. So the least ingredients possible, actually, is a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Clean as you can possibly eat. Nothing, as I say, nothing low fat, nothing low sugar. Artificial sweeteners, I mean, it's in the name. They are completely artificial. Your body doesn't recognize it as food. And of course, that's not to say you're not going to want the odd sweet treat. Of course you are. When you first quit alcohol, you can get a real sugar craving. And that's okay, but make it some, really good quality dark chocolate and put some dates in the freezer. That's a fantastic one if you've got a bit of a sweet tooth. There's always ways you can do that. And if you need the odd biscuit or cake, then, that's not going to be a problem. The problem is when you skip meals, end up eating loads of processed food, and then your poor body is thinking, well, what's happening now then? Because I don't seem to have the dopamine hit I was having before. And where's my serotonin and all the rest of it? So that's why the nutrients are so important. And, in addition, there are a few supplements that make a big difference, but that's a bit too complex to go into now. But there are things that make a really massive difference to how easy you find the transition.
And that's key, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Helping how well you feel doing it. And
exactly.
People may not know that might actually support them in feeling better, and then they can hang on a bit longer before they...
It totally will. It's about balancing that neurochemistry, those neurotransmitters, because, what's happening emotionally is often a bit of a roller coaster. Those early weeks, they can be a little bit odd because you're having to kind of rediscover who you are with this new sort of sober persona. It is a little odd. The first time you go out to a social occasion with friends who know you as a drinker, it can be a little odd. You're kind of observing yourself. Who is this person who, a few weeks ago would have been on the table? Who is this person? What does she do in this situation? I'm not even sure. So there are some odd things that you've got to kind of get past eventually. So the whole emotional piece is interesting, and you've got to sort of have all these conversations with yourself. But if you can make the physiology work with you, it's going to make it so much easier because food. I interviewed this amazing woman who wrote a book called The Mood Cure, and good food equals good mood. And it really will change everything when you're eating really good, satiating meals. It makes a difference to how we feel.
I love that. Moving on, you also said no is a complete sentence. And I think one of the biggest pain points for people considering, having an alcohol-free life is what they say to people in the early stages. Like I personally always advise people to, in the early stages where you do probably feel like there's a risk of falling off the wagon, to kind of avoid very triggering situations, because you don't have to be a hero. You don't have to go to the pub the next day to prove you can without a drink. And now for me, I could be in Ibiza, a pub, and nothing's going to make me want to drink. Whereas back then, obviously, I was much more vulnerable. What would you say to somebody who would say, well, how am I going to go to this social event? Or how do I tell that person if I do want to go, I don't want to drink? Like, any tips, any hacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, if it's too early days for you and you don't want to go, simply don't go. End of. If you do want to go, then my tips would be to give people a heads up. So the people you're going out with, give them a heads up, drop them a text or whatever, and just say, oh, by the way, just because it just eases the transition, really. So, by the way, I'm not drinking at the weekend or when we go out. But, you might want to then add a reason. You can choose. So some people decide to just fib. It's easier. And you know
Why
what?
not?
You have my permission. I'm on antibiotics. I've had some dental work or whatever. Or a really great line to use is, I'm not drinking at the moment, by the way, and I'm feeling great. I feel so much less anxious. I mean, it's a great one, because which friends actually are going to come back and go, no, I prefer you anxious.
That's
a
great
good
one.
But then there is another piece that I would add, and it depends who you're going out with. But often another piece to add is, you don't need to worry about me though, because there's a great kombucha that I really like, or the venue we're going to has got alcohol-free beer, or that kind of thing. And the reason I say that is because so many people are people pleasers. Both the person who's going sober and the people around you, they're kind of people pleasers, or at least they think they are.
Yeah.
So when you arrive and you can't have the lovely alcohol that they're having, in their mind, they feel sorry for you. Oh no, oh how awful for you. So if you can kind of diffuse that by just going, I'm great, I've got my whatever, my soda, my kombucha, my whatever it is, it just helps ease the transition. So I think giving people a heads up is a good idea, and also literally planning ahead yourself. So do ring the venue. Do find out what great alcohol-free drinks they've got. And I mean grown-up alcohol-free drinks. We don't want a cola or a warm orange juice, thank you. We're not 12, right? We want a proper grown-up drink. And I think asking for that is really important. And the more we do, the more venues will have a great choice. And, I've got this saying, keep the ritual, change the ingredients.
Yeah.
Have a drink in a nice glass. You may not want a replacement. Some people like alcohol-free beer or alcohol-free wine. Other people think, no, do you know what? That's too much like the real thing, perhaps. But that's fine too, because there are so many other choices. The kombuchas, the artisan tonics, the botanicals, there's fiery ginger drinks. I mean, there's so much now. So there's no excuse really for any venue that hasn't got fantastic alcohol-free drinks. So ring them up, ask them what they've got. If they don't have any, take your own and tell them you're going to bring your own.
Oh, I like that. And do you know what else I think is really important that you touched on was the ritual element. I remember I used to watch Scandal with Olivia Pope as the lead character, and she would always have this fabulous massive glass which she'd drink her red wine. But really it was just, and then so I went and got these amazing wine glasses, but there's no reason why you can't have these fabulous glasses that have something completely different.
Absolutely. It really annoys me that glasses have to be named by an alcoholic substance.
It's not even a wine
They're
glass,
just
is it?
lovely
It's
glasses,
just a beautiful glass.
Yeah, or even if I'm just having water, I always ask for it in a nice glass. Why not? Yeah, totally. It is about the ritual. We're not kids, and if you were having your whatever alcoholic drink you used to like, whether it was red wine or a chilled white wine or whatever, you probably wouldn't fancy it if it was in a polystyrene cup that was a bit cracked. Yeah. Or a dirty mug. So it's is it really the alcohol that you want, or is it actually the associations?
I think that's a really good point. And I think as well, when you become alcohol free or you go on a journey, then it opens up, it kind of shines a light on a lot of areas. Like for me personally, I realised I can actually just dance and feel really hedonistic.
I know, absolutely. You can dance sober.
Part of it is actually just the music.
Totally. All of it is the music.
Yeah.
I mean, people get so fearful that they're not going to be able to have a good time. But the reality is, there's the sort of anagram, sober equals bores. The opposite is true. It's drunk people who are really boring. And most people, they think they were great fun when they were drunk. But if you ever kind of have the horror of having to watch a video back or or have someone tell you what you were actually like, it's mortifying. And actually, I've never met anyone who genuinely preferred themselves as a drinker.
Okay, so I'm going to go to something now where a lot of people may watch and listen and think, yeah, but I get a great buzz out of drinking. And I know for me, I haven't actually been diagnosed with ADHD. I believe I have it. And whenever I've spoken to someone about the whole ADHD framework, addiction and ADHD can sometimes go hand in hand.
Yes, they do.
Because of the dopamine that you're seeking. And I do feel like I am on the hunt for a higher lot. And so one of the things, for example, for me that I've been doing recently that is giving me that is running. And I never thought I would be a runner. I always thought I'd do sprints at school. I'd never do 5Ks, 10Ks. And now that I'm into it, I'm like almost addicted to it. Like I want that feeling. So do you have things that you do that give you like a natural high? Now.
I think there's a couple of things to say there. I think the first thing is you're absolutely right. There is a link, and I think anyone who kind of chases dopamine, which we all do, let's face it, we're all chasing dopamine, whether it's scrolling on our phone or reaching for that next high. But there's two things here. One is that when we're drinking regularly, we become addicted because alcohol is an addictive substance. But the interesting thing is, they reckon that the dopamine kicks in a couple of seconds before you take that first sip.
Wow.
So, there is an argument that would say, how much is actually the alcohol itself? And how much is that, all of that we were talking about just a moment ago, that association? How much of it is the association? Would you really get exactly the same dopamine hit if you were standing, next to a skip with the polystyrene cup that's broken, on your own in the freezing cold, in the rain? Would you get the dopamine? I would argue not.
Nah.
I would argue you would not get the dopamine. So it actually isn't the alcohol. It's all of the associations around it. And the reality is, when you get free from that addiction, when you get free from that, you start to appreciate little things much more. So whereas before, when I was drinking, I was very much kind of bigger, better, faster, more. Whatever it is, I want more of it. Whatever you've got, I'd like more of it and faster and right now. And I had very little appreciation of small things. I found people used to talk about mindfulness. I'll have to just stop it. Give me a glass of wine. I'm not going to stare at that, whatever. I used to find all of it just really difficult because I was constantly chasing the next what I thought was the next hit. But once I quit, I was able to have so much more appreciation of smaller things. So therefore, other things, much more, easy things to achieve, if you like, would give me that, in inverted commas, high. So I was then able to do a few stretches or go for a lovely walk in nature or, make some cookies or whatever. Literally whatever works for you can give you that high once you've quit alcohol. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I do, yes.
It's about having those resources. Running, obviously, is a fantastic one. But it doesn't matter what it is. It needs to do it for you. It needs to lift your spirits just a bit. And you become so much more appreciative of little things. That's why, I always tell people to keep a list of, I call them blessings. Like, note all the little things down that you're appreciating now, because you're no longer just reaching for a glass. In the past, I've had clients who'll say to me, well, I get home from work and, I'll kind of take my coat off and then I'll be like, oh, thank goodness. Now I'll reach for a bottle of wine. That's it for the evening. That's it. They can't finish a movie. They can't concentrate to read a book. Probably can't be bothered to cook properly. Takes away your joy, right? Alcohol steals your joy. And when you quit alcohol and you're able to be open to what new, fabulous, exciting things there are already in your life often, it changes everything.
I suppose because it's like a shortcut, isn't it? I agree. I'm sure the dopamine does hit often before you drink. There is I remember feeling almost like it hits your bloodstream, or something.
There's a little buzz, isn't there?
There's a buzz.
Of course.
So and people talk about taking the edge off. But I suppose when you do that enough, it's like, when Tony Robbins talks about changing your state.
Exactly.
And the quick way of doing it is like drugs and alcohol, for example. And I suppose what you're saying is when you always take that shortcut, then you don't have the opportunity to see how the smallest blessings can actually give you. Is that what you mean?
It is. And I mean, the reality is you can think of getting to the state you want very quickly with drugs. But actually, if you were to say to most people, well, how about if it was not addictive and you could just have a little bit of heroin and get you there really quickly? Yeah, you see, you laugh, don't you? It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Even though part of you probably knows that if you did, yeah, you might get high really quickly. At what cost?
At what cost?
At what cost? And everyone's forgotten that alcohol is actually, when you take everything into account, the most harmful drug. When you take into account crime, harm to the economy, harm to family units, obviously health. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So it's incredibly harmful. And it's so crazy just to think of it as just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. So yeah, have a taste and think that you're getting a buzz. At what cost? It's a depressant.
Yeah, it is.
Alcohol is a depressant. And as we've already said, it's arguable that a lot of the dopamine that you get from it is not the alcohol. It's linked to all of the associations around it. Certainly for people who are, somewhere on that grey area drinking spectrum. It's all about, the majority of women watching this would never contemplate having alcohol unless it's in a lovely glass, in a lovely setting with people they like.
Mm. And I think what you say is really key, isn't it? It's the insidious nature of alcohol that makes it the most dangerous because it's legal.
Yeah.
Because it's widely available.
Yeah.
Because people don't frown on it half the time.
Well, it's
it isn't like
practically
heroin.
forced on us.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, it's, rite of passage. Come on then.
Yeah.
Young man, you're 15, let's go to the pub or whatever. It's crazy.
That's what makes it feel all the more worrying because it is just subtly there. And then before you know it, you can't be without it.
Well, that's it. And I think that's why we need to change the whole conversation around alcohol. It is starting to change, but we need to change it more so that we make it not compulsory, as it feels like it is now almost, but completely optional. There'll always be people who drink.
Optional.
I'm not up for prohibition. I want it to be as normal to choose not to drink as to choose to drink. That's it.
That is the key. It's normalising someone's decision.
Exactly that.
To not drink. Because whilst I'm sure we sound really evangelical and like, yay, and a lot of people might roll their eyes, because I know because of how normalised it is to seem like you're different when you're sober, actually all you're saying is, no, you're not trying to force sobriety onto everyone. You're just trying to normalise sobriety.
I'm definitely not. I have no problem with people drinking. I can be around people drinking. If it's their choice, it's absolutely fine. As I said, my only question to anyone who is even vaguely interested, I would just simply say, ask yourself, could my life be better physically and emotionally without alcohol? For some people, the answer will be, no, I'm good. I have a sherry at Christmas, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
But for other people, it will be, actually, I've had that little voice in the middle of the night. I've wondered whether, why did I waste that whole day in bed feeling ill after I'd, drunk yet again? It's interesting, isn't it? Because, if any of us ever eat food that doesn't agree with us, we never eat it again, do we? Never. We'll go to great lengths to make sure that we never cop it again, whatever it is,
And you see that in childhood, even watching my kids. As soon as they learn that they don't like something.
Oh, okay, no more peas.
Yeah.
But, but with alcohol, we do the same behaviour again and again. And then we wonder why we've got the same result.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'd love to talk to you about, the early days of the music industry for you, because it is such a fascinating part of your story.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you ever reflect on drinking. Do you ever link it to kind of like the entertainment industry and your music career? Because obviously, you were touring with Wham, you had your own music.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I'm grateful that I didn't completely overdrink. I didn't go completely crazy, thank goodness. And I never took drugs, despite, in loads of bands that I was in, there were obviously people around me on drugs, but I didn't, and the honest truth is not because I was holier than thou, it's simply because I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified of losing control because I didn't have a kind of safety net, and I couldn't go there. But the alcohol, obviously, everyone was doing that. So I used to drink, fortunately not too much. I think the only thing when I look back, I realise how that industry, certainly back then, it absolutely is what everyone does. And of course, it's all free. So, I remember the even now you go to functions and the alcohol is free, but if you want an elderflower cordial, that'll be 12 quid.
That is, do you know what? I think that's the most mental thing, especially with those sit-down dinners and galas.
Exactly.
It's like
the trick there is you send them an email in advance and you say, this is my dietary requirement.
I like
to have
that.
grown-up alcohol-free drinks. I always do that now, and they often pull it out the bag. I recommend what they should get for me as well.
And that's a good point, being proactive, and a lot of people may not know that, so that's a great hack.
Definitely. It is a dietary requirement. I'm going to be sitting down celebrating with everyone else. You know that at a function, they've kind of, in their mind, they budgeted for half a bottle of wine per person or whatever, so they can put mine towards a decent alcohol-free drink, please, not a warm orange juice. But yeah, with the music industry, and it's always free. And even in the early days of radio, I mean, oh my goodness, my early days when I was working at GLR, which is now Radio London, I mean, we were all in the pub at lunchtime, pretty much every day. It's incredible when I think back.
And did you think it affected your sort of like on-air performance ever, or was it just like normal,
No,
normal?
it was just entirely normal. Even all the years I was at Virgin Radio, I used to do a really late night show, and I'd always drink first. And I think I got away with it because I was never, our bodies are quite strong.
Yeah.
We can kind of get along for a reasonable amount of time, but there will be a cost. And as I always come back to, even if you could have a guarantee that drinking alcohol would not make you ill in the future, if you could have an absolute guarantee that it's not going to make you ill, why would you want to drink when life is so much better without any? That's the message, really.
What about if someone's thinking, but I feel like I can't kind of like dance like no one's watching without a drink. I can't be fun. I can't strike up a conversation. I can't go on a date. Because these are all the things. Because I remember I'd go on a date and I would I would go to O'Neill's, right?
Yeah.
I'd get a tequila. I'd knock it back, or a Sambuca. Then I'd go to this really nice, W hotel and sit down, having taken the edge off, and talk to this person.
Yeah.
And that's like a real thing, isn't it?
It is. But you've got to peel all of those layers back and ask yourself, so actually what's really going on here? Where is where's your sense of self-esteem? Where's your sense of self-worth? Where's your sense of knowing that you're enough as you are? And if the person you meet is the right person for you, great. And if they aren't, that's fine too. And so what if you're not the best dancer, but maybe, do a class or whatever? The point is, it's not about the alcohol, is it? The answer to all of those things, which are all just very human fears anyway. We all have those thoughts. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough, and on and on and on. We need to look at all of those things. All of us do. But just deciding that the answer to those fears is to use a crutch, which is toxic liquid, which is actually going to be harmful to us, is crazy. It's just crazy. And the reality is, it doesn't actually work. You think it takes the edge off, and I suppose you lose your inhibitions a little bit, but that might not necessarily be a good thing.
What's like a really gentle and kind, loving thing that you can say to yourself, especially because obviously having been through the whole Hay House and the Louise Hay, for those who don't know, Louise Hay was all about positive affirmations.
Absolutely. Mirror work. And
you've got a great story on Louise Hay, haven't you? But what would be like a really kind of practical thing that someone could say to themselves? Maybe there's a woman watching who's thinking, oh, okay, yeah, maybe you're right, I don't have great self-esteem, but then they're almost making themselves wrong for that.
It's not an easy fix, this one. It isn't a wake up and decide I must love myself more and then it happens instantly. I think it's all about just becoming curious what it would feel like to actually like yourself. And that, I know that sounds like it's nothing, but actually it's a big thing. If you simply bring in that curiosity and you just set yourself a little challenge every day for 30 days, do Louise Hay's challenge of looking in the mirror. And if it's too much to say that you love yourself, then you could just literally look in the mirror and say, I wonder what it will feel like when I'm someone who can actually say I love myself. Of course, the very next voice that comes in will be, don't be so ridiculous. You look terrible. I mean, I've had one of those days today. Like, I look terrible. My terrible bad hair day. But you know what? It doesn't matter, does it? It does not matter. This is about who you are. And you just have to become curious. What will it feel like when I'm someone who can value myself, have some self-esteem? But I can tell you that step one has to be quit alcohol, because it's really hard to do that when you're still drinking.
Very good point. The self-flagellation, the self-hate that I would feel hungover. And And now I know that sometimes occasionally I'll have those moments when I'm just dehydrated.
Yeah.
So you're shrinking your brain, aren't you?
Totally.
And so if I'm ever going through a bit of a like, I feel a bit dehydrated, there's a little experiment that I do where I'll literally drink a pint of water before bed. I wake up liking myself so much more. So it's brain chemistry, a lot of it, isn't it?
It's brain chemistry, and it's choosing your thoughts. So we all do have these thoughts, the I'm not enough, I look terrible, and on and on and on. But we just have to start to notice them. So we can actually just sort of remember, you are not your thoughts. They are part of you, and your unconscious mind will try and keep you safe and keep you doing what you've always done, because that's how it knows that you stay alive, basically. It doesn't make a judgment, just wants you to do what you've always done. So when we're trying to set new pathways in place, literally new neural pathways, we've got to coax it along a little bit. So we've got to notice those thoughts. And then if you can, put the pause in and actually say to yourself, well, actually, that thought was a bit unkind. I probably wouldn't say it to my best friend. So why am I saying it to myself? And literally change the thought for a more positive one. It takes a bit of time, this work. That's what we do in the Sober Club. I've got people who have been been sober for years, but they stay in the Sober Club because we do loads of this mindset work and loads of this work around how can we just basically start to like ourselves and start to bring in more self-care. Self-care is such an important word, and everyone abuses it, and they think it just means rushing off to a spa, which of course is lovely, but that's not what true self-care is. It's the things we do every day and the way we think about ourselves.
I want to know more about the Sober Club. So before we go, I want to obviously hear all about it, how people can join it. I want to just touch on a few more chapters of your life, because you've had such an amazing life so far, and you've still got amazing things that you're doing now. I think people would go crazy at me if I didn't ask you some show busy questions. So I'd love to know more about how, because you toured with Wham. How did you meet George Michael?
So I was my very first job was a singer with Mary Wilson and the Wilsations, so the lady with the beehive. And then I got fired from Mary's band because I wouldn't cut and dye my hair. They wanted me to cut it really short and dye it chicken yellow, and I just didn't want to do that.
And how did you even meet these guys in the first place in the music industry?
I just saw an ad in the Melody Maker.
What's Melody Maker?
The Melody Maker is anyone who's older than you will remember the Melody Maker. It was a newspaper, a musician's newspaper, basically, a newspaper about the music biz, and there'd be ads in the back,
like the stage newspaper.
That kind of idea, but for the music biz, and there'd always be ads. So I heard about Mary's band and got a job there as a backing singer, and I was with Julia Fordham, who is now big success herself. So I toured with Mary's band. I got fired because I wouldn't cut my hair. And there was a headline in the Sun newspaper that said, "Too hairy for Mary." I was so proud of that. Anyways, and then a guy in the band told me that he knew a tour manager who was putting together Wham's tour. They'd literally just gone on Top of the Pops and they were putting the tour together. So I went and auditioned, and the tour manager said, or rather the MD said, well, he put me through a few paces and got me singing. And then he said, you sound really good, but actually I think George and Andy, their management, are going to recommend that they have a vocal section. So 3 singers who already tour or work together. And he said, we've got Kokomo coming in. And they were a really hot US vocal section. But I thought really quickly, and I just said, oh, I didn't realize that. I'm part of a section. I work with another guy and a girl. And he said, oh, that's great then. Come down.
And was that true?
Of course not. No, of course not. I'd done loads of sessions, but I wasn't part of it. So I get home and I'm going through my file of facts, ringing everyone up. Put together a section. Literally, we rehearsed by phone. We had to make it sound like we'd worked together for years. And we went in and got the gig, so... Eat heart out, Kokomo. So that's how we got the gig for the first Wham tour. And then
what was the audition like? Was it singing together with this section that you put together then?
Yeah, and just George and Andy were there, and obviously the guys in the band, and yeah. So it was amazing. Really, we were so lucky, I suppose you could call it, to get the gig, because it was an amazing gig. And so I did all the tours, including China, which of course was unbelievable. And
have you got
bizarre.
Any of the memorabilia?
Yeah, I've got loads. In fact, in my book, From Wham to Woo, when I was putting the book together, I thought that I was going to have to use just all the kind of record company pictures, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so boring. But I couldn't recall if I'd got anything else. And then I went out one night, came home, and my husband said, I found gold. I'm like, okay. And he'd been in the attic and found this massive photo album that I had no memory of.
Wow.
It was incredible. So the book has got loads of pictures that have never been seen before of George and Andy in the dressing room and the tour bus and all of these amazing pictures. And there's some tour programs and some really weird T-shirts. And
And was that from a little camera that you had?
Yeah. And you know, of course, old days, you have to literally physically take it to get them
developed. Yeah.
So nobody keeps those things. It was incredible that I'd kept it. It was amazing.
That's amazing. What was your first impression of George like, and what was he like as a person? Any fun memories of him?
He was fantastic. He was, you got to remember that they were very young and literally sort of catapulted straight into this huge success. But you know, they were both really fantastic fun, and you know, we used to have such a laugh, really. Later, during the later years of obviously with Wham, we only did tours for a few years, but on the later tours, I think it became really apparent that George was just going to be a megastar in his own right. We just kind of knew that. It wasn't spoken about, or it was just sort of became obvious that it was as if he kind of grew. So his talent grew exponentially in those years. You know, he very quickly was, you know, obviously he used to produce everything. He used to sing on everything, which was really annoying for us because, you know, we were the band and we were doing all the tours. But when he recorded albums, he didn't need us because he did all his own vocals. Can you believe that? He did all his own backing vocals. How dare you? It was so frustrating. So we only ever got to do the kind of live things. Like there's a live recording of Everything She Wants where the band are all on there. But we just sort of could see his talent just literally like a shining star, really. So that was quite fascinating to watch.
And is it true that he gave some, I think, was it with Careless Whisper, he gave some of the royalties to Andrew?
Yeah, he would always
as like a gesture.
I think he would always be very generous to Andrew. I mean, there's lots of people have kind of said, "Oh, well, Wham was really just George." It really wasn't. It really was Andrew as well. You know, because he was just so much part of it. I don't know whether George would have ever even had the confidence to really get going without Andrew. That's the reality. I mean, you've probably seen the documentary where it really shows how close they are as friends. And I always remember on the very first tour, we used to have obviously loads of merchandise and T-shirts and everything, but they also had little dolls. They had George dolls and they had Andy dolls. And it was the one bit of merchandise that I could never get hold of. And everyone used to say that the Andrew dolls sold out instantly. And George would be like, what?
Oh, that's really cute. I love that. And then as a radio girl myself, I'd love to know, like, when did your kind of love for radio creep in? Because you spent years on air.
Yeah, I did.
You know, you Radio 2 for years.
Yeah, Radio 2 for 24 years. Before that, I was at Virgin for 6 years, Virgin Radio. Before that, I started at GLR, as it was then, BBC Radio London. That's where I did my first radio gig. I presented a gospel show there.
Wow. How did you get into that?
Into the radio.
Yeah, in general.
Yeah, so I was... this was, I'm trying to think, I suppose, late 80s. And I was touring the UK because I had a track out with Paul Oakenfold, interestingly enough.
Oh, yeah.
A dance track. And it got to the, I don't know, in the dance charts, 8 or 9 or something in the dance charts. So we were touring around radio stations. And on one of the radio stations that I went to, it was a BBC local radio station. And I did my little chat about the track and having worked with Wham and all of that. And then he said, oh, do you want to hang on and we'll just chat about some other stuff? So, yeah, okay. And he gave me some letters to read. It was the old days. And it was so funny because I kind of sat there on the mic reading these letters. And I remember thinking, oh, this is fun. I could do this,
you got a taste for it then.
Read out loud. I could read a letter out loud.
But you got but you got the voice as well.
Well, so
it's got
you.
Tone to it.
But I remember thinking, this seems fun. And then I came away and I heard an ad on GLR. And the ad it said something like, would you like to learn to be a producer and a presenter on BBC Radio. Would you like a free training course where you learn everything? And yes. Yes,
These
please.
ads in the paper were fantastic.
Then they said at the end of the ad, to qualify, you must be under 20 and living in Vauxhall. Right. So I wrote one of my famous letters and I said, "Dear BBC," whoever it was, I would love to do this training. And I banged on a bit. And then I said, there is only one problem. I'm not under 21 and I don't live in Vauxhall. And then I said, but as you're the BBC, I don't think that you should be areaist or ageist. I was ahead of my time, right? Wasn't I ahead of my time? But then, of course, I said, obviously I'm joking and I completely understand that you've got boxes to tick. So could you point me in the direction of another course that I can pay for? Because I really want to do this. And then I get a phone call a few days later. I won't try and do the accent, but it was this gorgeous Caribbean man. And he said, "Is that the very cheeky Janey Lee Grace?" I said, "Yeah, hello." And he went, "Just come on the course. We won't discuss where you live."
So you were a hustler from day one.
I was so lucky to get that. And I did this training. It was the best training ever. And then Sid, the guy who was running the training, said to me, just go to your favourite station and offer to make tea or whatever. So I went to GLR and they didn't need anyone. But then it transpired that the girl doing the gospel show needed some support. And I happened to know all about gospel music, much to their surprise. So that's how it started.
So there's a thread here with you.
Oh yeah,
there's
definitely.
a common theme.
Going after what I want.
Yeah, and a real hustler.
Well, other people have said that to me. They've read the book and they've said to me, were you a really confident hustler? And actually, the answer is absolutely not. I had zero self-confidence and self-esteem, and I was not really a hustler. What I was absolutely. I'm desperate is the wrong word, but ambitious and so determined that it was worth giving something a go.
Oh.
So there's a slight difference. There
Where
really
did that
is.
come from, that ambition? Because not everybody
I have no idea, actually. It certainly wasn't... It's an interesting question, isn't it? The nature versus nurture. My parents had no idea what the hell was going on with me. It's like, well, what is this person that we've spawned who wants to, sing and dance the whole time or whatever? I don't know where it came from, but I always knew that I was going to be doing something different to the way I grew up. I just always knew that. At first, I thought I wanted to be a dancer or be in musicals or whatever, but I always knew I wanted to. I'm a show off. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Really, and so there always have been.
So there is this kind of confidence there, but maybe
it's a different kind of confidence, isn't it? Wanting to sort of be in the limelight is not quite the same as actually having self-esteem and self-respect.
Exactly. You can mask quite a lot, can't you?
You can. You really can.
And then your transition, because I'm going to conclude with your entrepreneurial journey, which I can't wait to talk about, because then it will lead us back to the Sober Club, which I want people to know about. But when you transitioned to Hay House Radio, was that around that? Were you kind of doing the mainstream radio simultaneously?
Yeah. I was doing it all at the same time. So I was on BBC Radio 2 for 24 years, and my Hay House book came out in, I think it was 2013, something like that. And so for around 3 or 4 years around that period, up until about, 2017 or something, I was a presenter on Hay House Radio. So it was just a weekly radio show, but it was amazing because I got to interview all the gurus. I mean, people like Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, which lots of people will know that book, multi-million selling book. And so I got to interview all of these incredible people, and I got to learn all this stuff about spirituality, about everything really to do with health and well-being, particularly when you look at the whole positive psychology kind of piece. So I learned all of that. I'm sure some of it must have gone in, even though I was still drinking for much of that time.
And was that another one where you kind of reached out because you started to feel like you were interested in like a holistic way of living, so you reached out to them, or you saw an advert?
No, I'd been involved in the holistic living piece for years because, as I said, my first book, Imperfectly Natural Woman, came out 20 years ago.
Wow.
So that was with a different publisher. And then I moved from there to Hay House. So they offered me the publishing deal because they'd seen the success of that first book.
So that was a natural synergy there to
Yeah,
move.
yeah, it was, yeah.
And what was Louise Hay like?
Oh, just absolutely beautiful. Just such an amazing woman. I mean, I always used to say, when I grow up, I want to be Louise Hay. I really do. I mean, so inspiring, and just everything that she created was really quite special, really special. And I saw her. I was speaking at a conference that she was speaking at, one of the Hay House conferences, and even when she was, gosh, she must have been 89 or something, 88. And there she is, absolutely rocking that stage, looking incredible, so on it, and challenging us, challenging everybody in that audience. Go to the bathroom when we take a break, look in the mirror and say, "I love you," followed by your name. Okay. It didn't go well.
Was there anything that she left you with that you will never forget?
Well, that was one of the big ones, the importance of being able to actually look yourself in the eye and tell yourself that you love yourself. We can't do it. Typically, we find it really, really hard. But yeah, there were many things, really. Actually, there's one saying of hers that I use all the time, which is when I'm sort of trying to help people to recognize the importance of noticing their thoughts, not necessarily acting on their thoughts, but noticing them. So one way of doing that, of course, particularly if you're in the early stages of quitting alcohol, is to use something like journaling, to literally write down what you're thinking. Stream of consciousness type stuff, not because you're going to write a book or a blog, but just because you're going to get it out onto paper. And sometimes you find yourself writing things, if you're trying to to journal, to stream of consciousness, as in pen on paper, not on your phone, then what can happen is, as you're writing and you've committed to just carrying on writing for 3 minutes or whatever it is, what can happen is a thought will come into your mind that will be something that just a thought that pops up, but the next thought will be, "I'm not going there. That's not something I'm going to think about or write down." So you'll notice yourself consciously editing because something's too difficult or painful to think about. We've all had that experience. But of course, the act of journaling is to just carry on and write it down anyway.
You get through that barrier by doing that.
Exactly. So you just write it down. And Louise Hay has this fantastic saying, "You can't clean the house till you can see the dirt." That's it, isn't it?
That's a
You
gem.
have to get it out. Most of us don't. We have an uncomfortable thought,
Ooh,
and then we
that's a
reach
good
for a
one.
drink.
That's
right?
a good one.
Or we reach for whatever, or we have an uncomfortable thought, and then whatever it is, whether it's when you stop drinking, of course, those thoughts have got a bit more room to come in, and that's when it can feel really awkward. Because what do you do with these thoughts that you've just drunk through them for years? All you would do is drink them away. And when you can no longer drink them away, what do?
Or whatever you resist persists, doesn't it?
Exactly. So actually just
that's an
journaling it
interesting-
out or getting it out because once it's there, once it's out, okay. So then if it needs to be addressed, well, you can deal with that later. Typically not when you first quit drinking. Because nothing else matters when you first quit drinking. Yeah, and often what you find is that if you do push through and write down that thing that you didn't want to write down, you don't have to do anything with it. You literally, you've done your 3 minutes of journaling or whatever, you can forget about it. But what tends to happen is you will come back to that thought in your mind at some point, and often the answer will pop up. Exactly what it is you need to do will just pop up.
Wow. And I guess as well, it doesn't give it too much power anymore.
Absolutely.
It gets it out.
Absolutely. It's just released. If it's in the past, there's nothing you can do. We can't change the past. So if it's something you're worrying about that's going to be happening, you don't know it's going to happen. So that we can't do anything about that either. So just to notice that it's there and just document it is quite helpful.
Really powerful. Let's talk about you as an entrepreneur. I love everything that you're doing. You've got, the sober coaching course that I've started.
Yeah.
That I can't wait to continue on with, because I'm really interested in, helping other people.
Yeah.
To get sober. Then you've got the Sober Club as well. You've got lots of different things going on, but the Sober Club I really want to focus on, because that is a place where people can join and, get lots of interaction, connection. Tell me more about that for those people interested in wanting to go sober, who it's for, how they can join, what they would find inside it, and what it actually is.
Yeah. So it's a a well-being platform, I suppose, really. It's there are a few there's various bits and pieces. If you just go to thesoberclub.com, there are some videos and some blog posts and various pieces. And then if you join the community, which is not expensive at all, it's certainly less than you would spend on alcohol, let's put it that way. Then you can join our community, and then you have access to a absolutely huge portal of incredible stuff. And I'm really proud of it, because I'm really lucky that I get great guests. So over the years, I've had all these incredible guest experts who've done sessions within the Sober Club. So obviously you've got loads of teaching with me doing my thing, but we've also got massive sections on nutrition with really well-known nutritionists, hormonal experts. We've got fitness sections. We've got a shaman doing movement medicine. We've got a whole section on mindset, loads of meditations. We've got we've got a course in there, Get the Buzz Without the Booze, so you can literally work through an online course. We've got lots of videos from sobriety experts on different aspects, cravings. How do we deal with cravings? How do we deal with social situations? So it's absolutely all in there.
Wow.
And then in addition, we've got a private community where people can just post any time of day. It's quite small. I'm in there all the time. It's totally non-judgmental. That's the thing that sets it apart. We literally become cheerleaders for each other in that group. So who can join? Well, if you're sober curious, it's perfect, or if you day one, you're just starting out. But also if you've been sober for years, there's just a wealth of well-being stuff in there, because this is never really quit alcohol and okay, job done. It's all the everything else, because once you quit alcohol, that's when typically people do start to become really interested in meditation, mindset, or, organic food, or skincare without chemicals, or, whatever it might be. That's when the real excitement about the kind of whole holistic well-being comes in. So we've got members who are literally day one, and members who've been sober for 10 years.
Wow. That's amazing. So people can go online and where do they go
just
to find
literally
it?
thesoberclub.com.
And what's next for you? Because you've always got something going on.
I know. I'm very busy. It is a little bit crazy, but it's all good, and it's all kind of connected, really.
It is.
So in addition, I still run imperfectlynatural.com, which is my original website linked to my first book. So 20 years on, I'm celebrating that very first book, which is all about recommending holistic brands. And obviously the Sober Club sits alongside that. But there is everything there on natural skincare and makeup and food and everything to do with holistic living. And at the moment, I'm in the middle of my Platinum Awards, which is for natural brands and products and wellbeing practitioners. And the aim of that is just to try and bring exposure to brands who are in this space. Sometimes they're relatively well-known brands, but often they're one woman who's just started making skincare in her kitchen.
Wow.
And we just love giving recognition to that. So I've got some fabulous celeb judges on the board with me. I've got Glynis Barber, Cary Grant, and Joe Wood, who are the judges. And we run it across a full summer, so that the idea is not just enter and wait. The idea is that we can do some promo and just talk about all these great natural things that are out there for anyone who wants to level up a bit. Yes, that's really exciting. So I love doing that. So if you're a natural brand, then check it out. Or if you just love a natural brand, then put your nominations in.
Wow. And you've also got children as well. We haven't even touched
I've got 4 kids. I got 4 kids. Yeah.
What do they make of everything that you... Well, actually, as we walked in, you were saying that your son has one of...
Yeah, my son number 3, I discovered completely by accident, because he happened to be playing some music, and my track comes on, Cola Boy, right?
I love
it. What's going on here? I thought for a minute something had started playing by accident.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, you're on my playlist.
He's proud of his
very
mum.
cool, isn't it? Well, it still sounds like a good track even after all these years.
Yeah,
it's quite funny, really. But yeah, they're all great. The youngest is 20, and that's how I really remember that my book is 20 years old, because that's my top tip. By the way, if you're thinking of doing any of this, don't have a baby and release a book within 4 months of each other. That's not a good idea.
Well, you managed to do it.
Only just.
Oh, Janey, do you know what? It's been amazing having you on.
Oh, it's lovely to chat to you. It really
I can't wait to stay connected.
I'm really looking forward to seeing all the stuff you're going to do, because I think, your topic, particularly when you talk about hormonal health, is, the link between that and alcohol, as you well know. It's massive. It's never talked about. And the fact that, so many of my clients have told me that they rock up to a GP and they tell them they've got all these hormonal things going on, mood swings and anxiety and this and that. And then they leave with HRT and or antidepressants, but they haven't been asked about their drinking. So what is meant to happen when you've got a load of medication on top of medication? What's meant to happen there? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and we all know that alcohol wreaks havoc if you're going through perimenopause and the menopause. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thanks for inviting me.
And we'll get you back on. Have to.
Yeah,
There's so much more. And
we'll do the next bit.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.